Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're doing something really cool. We're stripping medical devices down to their absolute core to uncover the hidden chemical realities of device, material, and manufacturing characterization. Think of this as the non-negotiable foundational knowledge you absolutely gotta have locked down before you even think about evaluating a device for biological safety. Let's get right into it. Right off the bat, let's hit on a core rule. You cannot select endpoints for a device you have not described. Characterization is really all about gathering the cold, hard facts of what your device is actually made of. It's the bedrock. You literally cannot evaluate a device or even choose which risks to assess if you don't genuinely know what is in it. So here's the key difference. Characterization, that is a proactive, knowledge-gathering activity. It's all about figuring out the device, the materials, the processes, and pinning down the exact constituents and residues. Testing, on the flip side, is an evidence-gathering activity. That's where you generate biological or chemical data later on. Basically, testing only happens after characterization tells you what the heck you're actually dealing with. Here is our blueprint for today. First, foundation before evaluation. Then, mapping body contact, materials or complex recipes, the invisible manufacturing residues, appraising supplier certificates, and finally, documenting the worst case. Okay, Part 1. Foundation before evaluation. Let's jump right into Part 2. Mapping body contact. When we talk about building that foundation, identifying a device means defining the finished product across its entire lifespan, as supplied, in use, and at the end of its life. To pull that off, you've got to map out exactly how and where every single component interacts with the human body. Why? Because the type and duration of contact literally frame your biological risks. Take our fictional Vascuport Flex case study. Every single component is explicitly mapped out. The catheter, that contacts blood and tissue long-term. The titanium port body also contacts tissue long-term. And the sterile package? Sure, it has zero patient contact, but it does contact the device over its shelf life. We map all this out piece by piece because the human body absorbs the total aggregate exposure from all these parts combined. Now, the absolute crucial point here is that we aren't just looking at what physically touches the patient. No way. Even indirect contact, like, say, a saline fluid passing through that silicone septum in our Vascuport Flex, can transfer dangerous leachables directly into a patient's bloodstream. It's like a chemical highway. Every single wetted surface on a fluid path is entirely in scope for our evaluation. Moving on to Section 3, materials are complex recipes. We've got to shatter this illusion right now. A basic label like polyurethane absolutely does not tell you everything you need to know about a material. Actually, scratch that. It barely scratches the surface. A material like the Flexethane 90A in our case study is a super complex recipe. Yeah, it has the base resin, but it's also packed with plasticizers for flexibility, stabilizers to survive the heat of processing, crosslinkers, and even blue colorant master batches. And those colorants, they bring their own carrier resins and impurities along for the ride. Every single one of these additives is a potential migrating chemical species that your patient could be exposed to. And please, don't forget about surface treatments. I'm talking about cyanoacrylate adhesives bonding your joints, or those lubricious coatings on the catheter surface. Think of surface treatments almost like the frosting on a cake, except in this case, that frosting might contain highly reactive, unreactive monomers from an incomplete adhesive cure, or it could shed particulates from a coating that delaminates and wears down over time. These are all chemical constituents the patient might ultimately face. That is exactly why the specific cure profile of an adhesive is, quite literally, part of your characterization record. All right, Section 4, the invisible manufacturing residues. Let's look closer. So, during manufacturing, these invisible hitchhikers get left behind. We're talking about chemical residues that definitely aren't supposed to be part of the device's formulation, but they tag along anyway. Think about mold release agents used to pop a catheter out of its tooling, or heavy detergent and solvent residues left over from what you thought was a robust cleaning validation. Even microscopic metal particulates from routine tooling wear can embed themselves right on the surface. These are all constituents that can and will migrate to the patient. And guess what? Sterilization leaves hitchhikers too. Ethylene oxide, or EO sterilization, introduces dangerous residuals into the product. Things like EO, ethylene chlorhydrin, and ethylene glycol. It's a strict chain of events. These residuals only drop down to acceptable levels through proper, highly controlled aeration before the patient is ever exposed. Because the sterilization cycle itself totally dictates the final residual level, the process has to be meticulously characterized. You can never, ever just assume it's safe. Section 5. Appraising supplier certificates. Let's zoom out to the supply chain. This brings up a massive, massive risk in the industry. Does a medical-grade certificate guarantee your material is identical to the last batch? Blindly relying on a simple same-grade or medical-grade supplier claim is incredibly dangerous. A certificate is really just an input for you to rigorously appraise. It is absolutely not automatic proof of biological safety.
Here's the thing. A certificate typically only speaks to a raw material grade as it left a chemical plant. It says nothing about your finished, colored, processed, and sterilized medical device. This means upstream suppliers can completely change the additive package, swap out the catalysts, or alter the process residues while maintaining the exact same grade name on the paperwork. So same grade is just a hypothesis. It's not proof. You have to request the data, compare the actual constituents, and firmly justify equivalence yourself.
Finally, Section 6. Documenting the worst case. To make sure absolutely no chemical constituent or manufacturing residue falls through the cracks, we group things. If you have multiple variations of a device, let's say 3 different catheter lengths, you don't necessarily have to evaluate them all separately. You can group them into a device family, assuming they have genuine, verified, shared materials and processes. Then, you evaluate the worst-case scenario. This means you select the configuration that maximizes the biological concern, like the longest catheter with the largest surface area. That safely bounds the biological concern for the entire family. All of this macro to micro data culminates in documentation, like the T03 Material and Manufacturing Characterization Worksheet. This is brilliant because it gives you a structured, traceable row for every single component, every additive, every colorant, and every residue. It meticulously records exactly what the device is made of, how it contacts the body, and what hard evidence you actually possess, all long before you ever plan a single biological test. So, before you rush out to order a huge battery of biological endpoints, you really have to ask yourself, do you genuinely know the complete recipe, the additives, the exact manufacturing residues, and the hidden hitchhikers of your device? Or are you just testing a really dangerous assumption? Remember, characterization is the non-negotiable foundation of all biological safety. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking those tough questions about what your devices are really made of.